This is a really cool blank. I got this last year, 2024, at AAW. I ran into a guy named Michael Hendricks. He owns and runs Matador Turning Supply. I've got his information right here if you'd like to check him out. But this is Texas cotton. It is raw cotton, still got the seeds in it, and it is stabilized. And today we are going to attempt to turn it. This should be really fun. I'm going to put this on a Sierra kit. So I've got a 27/64" fish bit chucked up, and we're just going to do our best to drill right down the center of this blank. I'm going to make a correction. I'm actually going to put this on a Sierra button click. So we're going to use a little bit longer tube, but it is still a 27/64. And I grabbed a tube from a standard Sierra just to test, and we've got a really nice fit. I was telling you that I plan to use a Sierra button click for this particular blank, and this is the original blank from that button click kit. And you can see that when I turned it, couldn't tell you how long ago that was, but when I turned it, I blew it up. So I immediately grabbed another blank and a tube from a standard Sierra, not realizing these were quite a bit longer, and turned the other half of the blank, and it turned out quite nicely. I got the cap section with the button pressed in, and when I attempted to install the rest of the pin, it wouldn't fit. And this is why. Take a look at the difference in the blank. That blank is probably 3/8 of an inch longer than a standard Sierra blank. So what we're going to do today is quickly clean this blank off, and then we'll get it glued into our cotton blank. This tube still has a lot of glue on it from the last time that I used it. Not a big deal. It's going to fit nicely inside of our blank, and hopefully that glue will give something for the new glue to stick to. I am going to rough this end up because it's awful nice and polished down there. Let's go get this glued into our blank, and the next time you see it, we'll be at the lathe ready to turn. I got the tube glued down into the blank. Plenty of room on each end to be able to trim this down nice and flush with the tubes. Got a little Play-Doh in there to keep the epoxy out of the tube while I'm pressing it in. We're going to set this aside, let it dry overnight, and then we'll get started turning. I've got the cotton blank ready to turn, and I need to be really careful as I'm turning this blank because I noticed while I was squaring the ends of the blank that the seeds kind of pop out of the little shells that they're in. So I don't want any divots or holes in my blank. So we're going to turn it down a little bit. Then I'm going to soak it with some CA, turn a little more, and I'm going to continue to do that in hopes of keeping the seeds in their little pods. Otherwise, it's just not going to look very nice. I just finished truing the blank, and man, the resin they used to get this cotton into a solid blank was hard as a rock. It was a trick. It really did a number on my skew. Over here you can see what I was talking about in regard to the seeds coming out of their pods. I'm going to go ahead and get this blank soaked with some thin CA. We'll let it cure, and then we'll, while we're waiting for it to dry, we'll sharpen our skew and we'll get right back to turning. You can see I've got a good coat of thin CA. It kind of bubbled up a little bit there as it ran to the bottom. I did hit it with some activator to lock it in place. And now I'm going to go and sharpen my skew. We'll come back and see how much more of this we can turn. We are going to stop frequently and hit it with the CA just to keep these seeds in their pods. You might have noticed I switched over to carbide. This resin is so hard, it was just giving me fits. I was constantly having to stop and resharpen my skew. And I thought, well, let's just go ahead and get it down to size with carbide and see what happens. I'm going to put a little extra resin on the ends because I'm worried about the ends losing the seeds. All right, let's get back to turning. That was a nerve-wracking turn. Boy, oh boy, I was nervous I was going to lose every one of these pods. I kept filling them with CA. It did a nice job. What I'm going to do is put one more coat of thin CA on here before I start sanding, but I am at the point where I'm ready to sand. There's a couple of things I want to point out. You'll notice I started at this end and went this way. I stopped, and then I started at this end and went this way. The reason why I went from the ends toward the center is because when you went from the center out, it laid the cotton over the bushing, and I wanted to make sure I had a nice clean end on my blank. I am going to attempt to remove the bushings and re-square the ends of the blank before I do any sanding, because I don't know how well you can see it, but there's CA that is accumulated down here where it rolled over the end of the blank. So I want to make sure I get that off, get it cleaned up, and it doesn't cause me any issues, meaning possibly the bushing is glued to the brass tube. Okay, that one came out nice and easy. I'm going to take this and tap it. Well, there you go, on the ways of the lathe. Looks pretty good. You'll notice there is a fingernail on there. Let's get that squared up, come back. We'll coat this with a little CA to protect it, and then we'll start our sanding process. I've re-squared the ends of the blank. I'm ready to apply a thin coat of CA. I wanted to note that I do now have a piece of cardboard beneath the blank. Should have done that before I put any CA on the blank at all, because the CA that I put on the blank did drip down onto the motor of my lathe, and now any of the dust that was on that motor from this blank or from previous blanks is now permanently glued to my lathe. So use cardboard to protect your lathe from situations like that. I'm going to get my sanding discs out, and we're going to sand this blank up, and I think it's going to look really amazing. This blank sanded quite nicely. It's very smooth. I was a little bit nervous because it felt soft, kind of like a cotton shirt when I first finished turning it, but sanding did a nice job on it. I'm going to go ahead now, clean it with some denatured alcohol, and then we'll apply our CA. That's going to look pretty amazing. First coat going on. Just finished applying CA. Blank looks pretty darn good. I'm going to get it off the nonstick bushings, get it back on the turning bushings, and then we're going to micromesh it. I'll come back and show you what it looks like when I finish the micromesh process. Micromesh complete. The blank is really looking amazing. Going to apply some wax, buff it up, and then we'll meet over at the assembly table to assemble this into a kit. To assemble this pin, we'll start by putting this little grommet in the nib end of the pin, and we will use one of our bushings for protection as we press. Okay, that went in nicely. Now we'll flip it around, and this is where we're going to put the click mechanism. This comes as one piece, and remember I had a little problem right there. I'm going to put this clip in so that it covers that little bubble that I had to fill in. Perfect. That's going to be nice. Now to finish the pin off, we'll take the little rubber ball off the end of the refill, drop it into the cavity of the pin. We'll place our spring over the refill. And we'll thread the end of our pin on. Okay, this happens sometimes. Notice how the nib is not fully retracting. What that means is it's not fully seated or properly seated in the back of the pin. And we're gonna work on that a little bit. Let me shut the camera off and work on that for just a second, because I actually need 3 hands to do this. A little bit of looking, and I found the problem. Now what happened to me was this. This cap section and then the knurled section for the nib was already mounted into another pin, and I knocked them out. When I did, you might remember the end of the cap was a little white plastic looking piece. I actually damaged the edge of that little plastic looking piece. So what I was able to do was take a punch, and I was able to get it in there and sort of wiggle it and jiggle it until I could push it into that white section, and that re-enlarged that piece, and I was able to slide the ink refill right into it. So we are good. I would really like to thank you for joining me in the shop today for the turning of this cotton blank. I had a great time turning this, and I had a great time turning it because of the challenge. It's a difficult blank to turn, and in my mind, that makes it kind of fun. I like taking a difficult blank and figuring it out. Had a little bit of an issue with the pin kit. That was not the manufacturer's fault. That was my fault. But we got that corrected. And all in all, I'm very happy with the pin. I like the fact that it's a click pin. I can put it in my pocket, pull it out with one hand, pop it, and boom, I'm writing. So I would really like to take the time to thank you for joining me in the shop today. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and have a great evening.